Welcome back. Today's review is on the sequel to 2019's underrated horror comedy Ready or Not, starring Samara Weaving, who returns as the unsuspecting bride in Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. Building upon the world hinted at in the first film, we now have an expanding cast of characters played by Kathryn Newton, Elijah Wood, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and many more recognizable faces. Directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillet, who helmed the previous installment and whose previous directing works include Scream 5, 6, and Abigail, with the writers Guy Busick from Scream 7, Abigail, Final Destination Bloodlines, and then Christopher Murphy from Ready or Not in Castle Rock. And we also have Matt Bettinelli from Southbound in the horror anthology VHS. Ready or Not 2 takes place after the events of the first film, where Grace, played by Weaving, is in the hospital, visited by her strange younger sister, Faith, played by Kathryn Newton. Grace and Faith soon learn that the game of hide and seek is not complete, and Grace has one final game to play to determine who will take the throne as they try to stay alive and are being hunted by 4 rival families. And I'll have to say the sequel exceeded my expectations, for especially considering the first movie could have been a one and done. I think it stood on its own as a one-off film. I don't think it needed a sequel. It's cool that it does have a sequel, so that's nice to see. But the filmmakers were able to actually build upon the original, build upon the world that they hinted at within the first movie. I kind of think of it as something similar as John Wick, where John Wick could have stood on its own as its own film, but they were able to build upon that world with each installment. I think bringing in Grace's estranged sister was a great choice, as this allows to build more tension, them being hunted, but that they haven't spoke to each other in quite a number of years, and they had a falling out, with the reason slowly being told throughout their escape attempts. There are a lot of great comedic moments here outside of the overt violence, but as it's a horror comedy thriller, there were a few great moments as members of the families are taken out one by one in some interesting and horrific ways. But I do think the violence and some of the ideas they had could have went a little bit further. Some of them they're comedic in regards to how they occurred, but maybe kind of generic in terms of how these people died. The cast all around pretty well used, outside of one of them that I think could have been used a little bit more. It's one of the characters at the beginning of the movie, one of the families who decides to break the rules, and he pays the price for that. And I think they could have did a bit more in regards to like maybe some kind of montage of how that repercussion happens to his family. Even though within this world that people just kind of blow up if Satan is done with you. I think they could have allowed for a quick montage of his family members in weird or unique situations where they just kind of spontaneously combust, which could have been fun. There isn't much not to like here, but some may find that the movie takes a little bit longer to get going, as it does build up in regards to taking place shortly after the last film. Seeing where Grace is now in the hospital, being investigated by the police, her sister shows up. They spend some time with a few of these other families and their backgrounds a little bit. I realized David Cronenberg shows up as one of the heads of the families, which is kind of funny. And so that's probably like the only thing I think people would probably really have an issue with, is just how long it takes to get to the actual hunt and the action. But if you're looking for an entertaining trip to the theater, I highly recommend Ready or Not 2, Here I Come. 3 stars.